Welcome and thank you for listening to the Sales Maven Show. I'm your host, Nikki Rausch, your own personal sales maven. I'm here to offer you tips and strategies and techniques to truly master your sales conversations. Okay, here's a scenario. You have a prospect and they're excited to buy. Yay, right? And then you say to them, just Venmo me, or I'm just going to send you a bank transfer link. And suddenly the buyer has to stop. They have to figure out this new step. They have to maybe log into something and the momentum starts to like plummet, right? That interest, that high, ready to take action, ready to buy just keeps like getting less and less and less. The sale was happening, but then it stalled. So today we're going to talk about a mistake that is costing business owners real money. And it comes from a place of good intention that's trying to save on fees, right? Like cutting expenses, growing revenue, all are important in our business. However, when you're doing it at the cost of the sale, it isn't in your best interest. So I want to acknowledge here that, credit card fees, I get it. They're real. They're, somewhere between 2.5, 3.5%. And when you're selling high ticket or high volume business, those fees add up. Believe me, I know. And so it makes sense that you might look at an alternative, right? And there's plenty out there. There's the ACH, there's Venmo, there's Zelle, there's wire transfer, there's cryptocurrency now, and there's others, I'm sure. And of course, the intention of this is good, right? To save on your expenses, to cut these credit card fees. But the execution has a hidden cost, oftentimes that business owners are not calculating. And it's this idea of friction. Now, I know I've talked about friction in a few other episodes in different instances around sales, but anytime you create friction in the sales process, you risk losing the client, you risk losing the business. So when somebody has said yes to hiring you, and then you say, oh, hold on, let me put up a little roadblock here. Or even if you don't think of it as a roadblock, you think of it as a parking space, you have just created friction. You've slowed the momentum. And anything that interrupts them, like taking that next step, means that they might cool off, right? They might change their mind. They might start to second guess their purchase. Or frankly, they might just get distracted because life is always throwing us curveballs, right? And they get off a call with you and their intention is to go send that Zelle payment or, click on that link for the wire transfer, but they get busy. And then it gets pushed below the fold, right? It like, that saying, like when something goes below where you can see it on your email, like we kind of forget that it exists. And now you feel like you have to chase again. You have to like circle back with them multiple times. It's like, oh, I thought they were going to buy. Like they were so interested. So anytime you do that, you risk just losing the sale. And there's really no reason to slow down the sale when somebody is ready to say yes. Now, I get it. This idea of like, I don't like paying credit card fees either. I'm not particularly thrilled, when I see how much gets taken out when I do sell a high ticket, coaching program. But there is something about it's the cost of doing business. And where this really comes in, and this really was, it's actually a conversation that I have often with clients. I work with clients that sell, big coaching programs. I work with clients that want to sell subscription services. I work with clients that have retainer packages. And, these are like their core of their business. And when we talk about this idea of like reoccurring payment and making it so easy, oftentimes they like put up their hand and they're like, "Oh, well, I don't I don't want to take credit cards or I try to avoid taking credit cards." And it's like, "Okay, but what are you doing instead then? If this is something that's like an ongoing, right? It's a monthly coaching program, it's a retainer, it's some like, what are you doing instead? And they're like, well, I just send an invoice every month. And I'm like, okay. And how much time do you spend following up with that client to make them like to get the payment? Sometimes they're like, well, I have a few clients that pay right away, and then I have other clients that I have to follow up with. It's like, okay, well, is that really a good use of your time? And if you're sending reminders, if you're chasing down late payments, does that also start to like break down the relationship? Like maybe you start to feel a little resentful towards that client, or maybe that client feels like, why are they constantly hounding me for money? And it's a constant reminder that they are paying you money. So again, is this really in your best interest? So, there's certainly like the hidden labor costs, right? Your time and the value of it and chasing this down. If you're spending, let's say you spend 30 minutes a month chasing down payments, like what if you took those 30 minutes and used it for prospecting time? Or what if you used it to deepen connection with your existing clients and or offer an upsell, right? Or I don't know, just to me, it's one of those things like I just feel like sometimes, that saying like stepping over dollars to pick up dimes. This is what this feels like when I hear people push back about credit cards. And again, I honor the idea that nobody wants to pay these high fees, but there are solutions out there. And sometimes taking a credit card is the cost of doing business. Frankly, I would rather take a credit card for a couple $1,000 a month, coaching program that is automatically charged, and I don't have to put it in the client's face and remind them of it. I also don't have to chase them down for it. It doesn't create any friction in our relationship because the credit card is just automatically charged every single month. And especially if you have a subscription service, this always blows my mind. It's like if you have a subscription service, like you need to be taking credit cards. It's just so crazy to me. And I find this when I'm out in the world, right? When I go to pay. As a matter of fact, I just had this yesterday. I went to pay for something and the person said to me, well, if you pay by credit card, you have to pay a 3% fee. But if you give me your debit card, you know, you don't. And I was like, okay, fine. That's totally fine. I wasn't really thrilled with the way that she framed it because it would have been like, hey, we'll take whatever payment you want, but if you pay with debit card, you get a 3% discount, right? Like build it into the price. So don't make me feel punished for using a payment that is like what most of us pay all the time now. I mean, think about how often you use your credit card. And is it an inconvenience when somebody is like, oh, I don't take credit cards. And then you're like, oh, well, now I have to do something different. It disrupts the routine. And then you think like, do I want to go back to that place of business or do I want to continue to like go there where I can just go somewhere else and they don't give me a hassle about using a credit card? Because that's like every day. I mean, now I make a lot of payments just using my watch, right? Like I've got my Apple card, I've got my Apple Watch, and I just put my watch up to the little like, credit card machine and it runs it. Great. So easy, so convenient. I actually love the grocery stores that I go to that take that. And so the idea is, are you making it easy for your clients? Are you making it seamless or are you creating friction? So, when you're thinking about credit cards, of course, there are things that you can do to make this make sense for your business. You could build the fee into your pricing if that's really the thing that's getting in the way. Like, I don't want to pay that 3.5%. Then build the 3.5% into your price and know that you built it into your price. And then don't be resentful when you pay that 3.5% credit card fee, right? Or you can use some kind of a payment processor that that fits your model, right? I use Stripe, but of course there's many all other out there. And I'm not saying don't give them the option of ACH. If that's the option that you want, give the buyer a choice. But when you're slowing down the process because you don't want to pay a fee, it also sends the message to the client that you're kind of nickel and diming them. And I just don't think that is a really great place to be in the relationship, in the rapport, in the like, I'm so concerned about the fees that I am going to make you do extra work. It's like, no, you got to make it easy for people. And the easier you make it for people to pay you, the more likely they are. And if you want these reoccurring payments, then I mean, in my brain, I just cannot fathom this. And every time I get pushback from a client on it, I have to sit back and like kind of bite my tongue a little bit. But I will say this is the cost of doing business. And I know I've spoken about this before. I know I've written articles about this. I know I've shared many stories of instances where people have made it difficult for me to pay. And I just kind of get like kind of exhausted by it, right? There's so many other things that you have to deal with. You shouldn't have to jump through hoops to pay somebody money. And if you are making people jump through hoops to pay you money, you're creating barriers, you're creating the parking spots, depending on how you want to look at this. And is that really in your business's best interest, right? Like we want to make it easy for people to say yes, and then we want to keep them as a yes until the payment is made, right? Like, okay, let's make it so easy. So here's my challenge for you today. Look at your current payment process and ask yourself, how many steps does a buyer have to take after they say yes? If it's more than 2 steps, there is an opportunity here for you to improve your process. Might mean that you need to raise your fees a little bit. Might mean that you might need to invest in some kind of system, right? Stripe or, whatever, however you're going to do that. But if you're asking a client to take more than 2 steps to get payment made, you are slowing down the process and you're creating friction and you're risking losing the business and or not retaining the business for as long as they would have stayed had you just made it easy. Okay, so I want to hear from you. You probably have a counter opinion if this is something that you feel strongly about. I'm not I'm not I'm not opposed to hearing from you on that. It is something clients push back with me often, and so I'm okay with it. But when you really think about this, what is the job in sales? The job in sales is to close the business. It's to earn the business. And you do that by making it easy. So you're welcome to reach out and share your process and what has worked really well for you. And if you're willing to take a look at your own process, and if you have more than 2 steps and you're willing to make a change, I'd love to hear from you about that too. All right. As always, thank you so much for listening. I am wishing you continued success in your business and in life, of course. Have a great rest of the day.